This podcast contains an English accent that most of our Irish listeners will find offensive. Also, there may be some colourful language that you're going to find less offensive. Now, over to Ryan and Leon. Enjoy the podcast.
What's the story, morning glory?
Ah, wah, wah, wah. Wah, 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 wah. Wah, wah.
So between me and you, one of the things I wish I could do is whistle.
You can't whistle.
Can't whistle now.
Try it there. Is that your attempt to whistle?
Yeah.
Full on attempt.
Yeah, and I know people go, yeah, put your tongue there and you whistle. I'm bad at taking direction. Okay, yeah. That is brilliant, to be fair.
Thanks. I could even whistle inwards.
You're a very impressive man, aren't you?
I actually once met the man who was the whistler for Always Look on the Bright Side of Life.
Can you give us a... Always look on the bright side of life.
And he was like, I can't whistle like that anymore. My whistling days are done.
The whistling days are over.
John Altman, very interesting man.
John Altman.
Yeah, he used to be the saxophone player for Hot Chocolate.
Oh, I love hot chocolate. They don't get enough fucking mentions these days.
They don't at all, and it was very interesting because he was like, obviously they're like, you know, big sexy African American men in the 70s, and he was like, I was this bald Englishman who was white. And he's like, it doesn't have the same effect when I'm like, you sexy thing. He's like, I had to sing that every night. He's like, it's great when they do it, but when I do it, it sounds a bit weird.
So You Win Again is my favourite hot chocolate song.
Oh yeah.
So You Win Again. Anyway, that's poetry in itself. We're here for another show, another banger of a pod. Loads of stuff to cover today.
We've got fucking loads of
stuff going
Loads of things. We've got the Leaving Cert.
The Leaving Cert.
Boom, boom.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't know much about it, so you can tell me all about it.
I'll fill you in. Fill you in on all the details of the Leaving Cert. It's like A levels, but much worse.
And then we've got well, actually, I want to start the show. You again seem like you're running marathons every 2 weeks at the moment.
Clearly, I hate myself.
Yeah. You work in long hours, and then your free time, you can't stop running.
Yeah, it's not really much of a hobby anymore. It's more like a hindrance. But I do it anyway. I'm trying to do one a month. So I'm a month behind because I didn't do it in January. So I'm 5 in so far. So I have to do.
That's some beast mode. That.
So I'll try to do 12 this year.
Oh. Decent. Well, there was I'm getting back on it as well. I've run a marathon, but I am back in it after a couple of years away. And then in Dublin the other day, we had the women's mini marathon. So like, and I'm because I'm a man of the people. I was walking around Merrion Square kind of area, and anyone I saw with the top, I was like, congratulations. Ah, well done. Ah, thanks. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, no worries.
You were out canvassing again,
Ryan Duggins, man of the people.
Ryan Duggins for Dublin Mayor.
Yeah.
That's what you're going for. You fucking shaking hands and kissing babies again, were you? Yeah. Out there with it.
This podcast is just part of my longer play to become Taoiseach.
Well, the local elections are this week on Friday, so you could have put your name. That's what you were doing.
They are actually. We've got a poem from one of our favourites. We shared her work at the start of the series, Josefin Anna Friberg, who has a beast of a poem just about what we're talking about.
Runner's high. I didn't actually tell you about my marathon experience on Sunday. It was absolutely fucking terrible. It was just very, very hilly. And when you're down hills and you're running's hard enough as it is. When you're running hills, it's even more hillier, I suppose. The whole elevation was 30 meters higher than the Empire State Building.
Oh God.
You'd know that, just come back from New York.
Well, just back from New York, yeah.
You know
That's a fucking high place, man.
Yeah, well, I was 30 metres above that, collectively.
That's actually mad.
Yeah, it's fucking mad. There's lots of hills. But anyway, why we do it? The runner's high. Burning ties, shoe ties. Can't stop now, I must be somewhere nearby. Looking up to the sky, the sweat burning my eyes. Oh my, begging the Lord for an oxygen supply. Feels like I'm gonna fucking die. Can't stop now, I'll just ignore my inner cries. Why? I'm not gonna lie. My honest reply is I am a junkie, chasing after that runner's high.
That was Runner's High by Josefin and Friberg. And running is one of them things where it is shit until you're doing it. Do you know that the build up and the anxiety you've got, like, oh, I've got to do that run, I've got to get that run. But actually, when you're in it, it's incredible. It's an incredible feeling.
Takes me like 6 or 7k to get there.
Into a place where you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's just standard. Like, if you're not used to running marathons, even if you're just running 5k, the first k is awful.
Yeah.
And then you're gliding a little bit.
I think it's because obviously I'm going in with, like, I have to run a vast distance, so I'm like, it'll take, like, if you're doing a 5k, the first k will be worse, but you know, you're setting yourself, your body kind of relaxes after that. But for me, like, just because I'm running a much longer distance than 5k, it takes longer to get into it, I suppose, the swing things. And then after a while, you're just chipping away. Like, you do 20k and you're like, oh, yeah. Especially if you have a running partner, it's actually grand. So,
God, were you talking as you were running? I couldn't be up for this.
I was talking, and then I was listening,
chat.
and then I was just like, please stop talking, because I need to just be here.
Please stop talking
and be miserable. And then I was able to talk again after a while, but you go through, it swings around a bit, so you go through dips. And
it's mad that you could go, like, when I ran the marathon, I ran the Madrid marathon, this would have been about 8 years ago, maybe. But when I finished, I was like, I'm never doing that again. It was incredible, what an experience. But I was like, I've boxed that off now. It was so miserable. Like you said, yours was silly. Mine was in Madrid, and it was just fucking uphill, and it was absolutely grotesque. But it was great crack, and I'm glad that I did it. But to carry on doing it, man, you just a bit of a fucking
lunatic,
sacrificial lamb.
Someone goes, what cause are you running for? And I go, stupidity.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, stupidity. We've both been excited to talk about not a mythical creature of Irish culture, but as close maybe as you can get to myth and folk, which is a guy called Pat Ingoldsby.
He's like an Irish Gandalf.
I'd say that's a fair assessment. He certainly looks a bit like Gandalf anyway.
He just appears whenever he wants and disappears then.
It's a mythical sentient being that just comes in, drops a little nugget of a rainbow of a poem, and then lifts himself away. And unless you see him selling books in the street, no one really knows where he actually lives in Malahide, but like no one knows where he is
under an old oak tree, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. We got friend of the podcast and someone that we shared poetry on the show before, Sean Watmore, who is also a big fan, to introduce the mystical world of Pat Ingoldsby for us.
I guess for me is one of my favourite poets, and I guess for a number of reasons. You're asking where I first heard of him. I probably couldn't remember first hearing of him so much as I do remember coming up to Dublin as a child and with my parents from Kilkenny, and you would see that man that sat down on Westmoreland Street with a box of books, and that was just a figure that I recognised from a young age in Dublin, not knowing who or why. As I got older then, as I moved to Dublin myself and started hearing and learning of the folklore of who certain people are around town, the picture becomes a bit clearer and you realise who it was. And I guess at that point then I started reading more into the poetry that he'd written, and even before I'd been heavily writing my own poetry, I think it was something that always drew me in. Was there's something in his poetry that I didn't really find in many other people's, which is brevity and levity, I guess. Two things that I particularly enjoy when it comes to poetry. I feel sometimes it can be unintentionally, it can lean into the more somber emotions, but I feel like there's such an untapped wealth of opportunity in humour through poetry, and how it can sometimes be the gateway into a sadder thought or into a more emotional thought that allows you to go off and do the thinking yourself, but the joke might spur it on. One of my favourite poems, I think the one I'd always reference is, I can't think of what book it's in, but he had a poem called Dying, and it just goes, if it was good enough for Johnny Cash, it'll do me. And I know that that's funny, and I'm sure there's deeper meanings to that anyone could pick or take apart, but it's stuff like that I think the humour delivered through that brief and short sentence triggers you to think about so much more, and I think that's a great thing that poetry can do.
It's like you were saying about levity bringing out bigger emotions. It's like what we talked about last week about poetry being the window, not the views. I don't know who said that.
K Tempest.
K Tempest. That was it. Yeah.
Absolute another wizard of poetry.
Absolutely. But yeah, it's like there's a lot of love and value in having poetry that isn't so down in the fucking dumps all the time, and like bringing just a nice lighter touch to words and journeys and kind of art. It doesn't always have to be so.
It was like Phil Lynch's poetry we covered as well.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of. It's nice to have a bit of lighter poetry to balance out, because you know it's harder to write a light-hearted poem because you're trying to draw out joy in people, which is really difficult to do authentically. You know, you're like, I'm gonna write a funny joke, and like, how hard is it to write a joke?
So hard.
So hard. And
they're such easily dismissed piece of work. Like when you do a funny poem, where I do a funny poem, I think they can be so like, you know, they can be seen as trivial. It's not trivial. It's just our way of like Sean was saying, like just a different angle of pulling out attention and focus.
Do you want to hear the first joke I ever wrote?
Yeah.
I think I was about 5. And I said, why was the dog not smart?
I don't know. Why was
he didn't go to dog school, obviously. But then I went back as a man and refurbished it. Why was the dog not intelligent? Because he didn't have his pedigree.
Yeah, that is fucking good. That's really good.
Always a first draft. You know, you can always work. But you
just go back and read
25 years for me to, you know, work on that joke. But you know, here we are. I got a giggle.
You did get a giggle.
That's all right with me.
I enjoyed that. Speaking of a giggle, I want to share one of Pat's poems here now.
Oh, please do.
It's got that comic twist. It's like what he's saying isn't true, and we'll read about it. It's basically a mock-up news report of something awful that's happened on the news, but it's got that kind of satirical way of twisting it, going, "Actually, this is," then it makes you kind of see the world a bit bigger than you are. Like when I read this, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I need this poem to make me go, oh, you know what? The world is bigger than the telly or the news reports. This is a poem called "Welcome to Our Woe" by Pat Ingoldsby. Welcome to our woe. The news at 1. I'm Mark Barry. Happy and Hope have been officially cancelled and will never be heard of again. The World Forum for Misery, Negativity and Woe has just updated yesterday's announcement that things have never been worse, because they are now. It's also been made clear that yesterday's light at the end of the tunnel was another expert setting fire to himself. And now the weather. I wouldn't go outside again if I was you.
That was Welcome to Our Woe by Pat Ingoldsby.
Satirical.
Oh yeah.
That would be good on Mock the Week.
It would be. It's lighthearted, you know. He's slagging a very, very serious medium, which sometimes you need to do. Although the news is important, but also as well, don't take yourself too seriously all the time, you know.
What's the balance? What do you do?
I don't know, knitting.
Yeah, exactly. Knitting. Turn out just nothing.
Crocheting.
Writing poetry.
Writing poetry through the art of knitting, I don't know. But I suppose, like, you know, knitting could be effective in stressful times. Like, as I said before, the Leaving Cert is already underway. Waiting on that Leaving Cert weather. Hasn't really arrived yet. Usually the weather's lethal. Not right now. But
is that a thing? Yeah. So around course exam time,
it's got
shite like.
It's like a cliche now. So when you're at this time of year, when people, you know, when you have that small talk with people that you don't really know, and you have like people talk about the weather and all, and you know, and you're like, oh yeah, it's real cloudy. One thing that people in Ireland will say, they'll start talking about, oh well, you know, Leaving Cert's coming up, weather's about to be getting good now, and that's a real thing. Like
that is a gap in my Irish cultural knowledge.
And now there's like Irish memes out there making fun of that statement. Yeah, because it's such a well-known thing.
That's mad. That it's a well-known thing, and it's always in the summer. Typical.
It is.
Why are we here?
Because it's only ever like you can only ever get 2 good weeks of fucking nice weather in Ireland.
It has been nice,
and it will be during the Leaving Cert just to spite. I remember meeting my Leaving Cert and the weather was gorgeous and I was furious because you're stressed and then you're trying to like study while it's roasting and you have to wear epoxy uniforms and all. Terrible.
Yeah.
Do you have to wear uniforms in school?
Yeah, man. Well, here's the weird thing. We stop at 16. Our uniforms stop at 16. And then
Really?
between 16, 17, 18, you wear your own clothes. Depending on if you stay in the school and do your sixth form, you might be asked to wear office attire, actually.
Slacks?
Yeah, like shirt and tie, and pretending that you were working in like a solicitor's firm. Or in my school, you didn't get told that, but some schools did. But no uniform after 16. I have to say, should I say this on the show? I'm going to say it anyway. You shouldn't have 18-year-olds in fucking school uniform. I'm just going to say it. There's an Englishman here, you know, I'm being critical of the Irish way of life, which I am never.
Yeah.
But 18-year-olds who are off on the town on the night shouldn't be getting changed from a school uniform. I think that's odd.
Do you know what I did when I turned 18? My mum only found out this year. When I was 18, I was like, fuck it. When I went into the school office, and you know the way your parents' numbers are on the details? It's a ring if something happens.
Yeah.
If you're bold or whatever it is. I was like, I'm 18 now. I'm my own guardian. So I went in and went, yeah, my mum's had to update their number. There you go. And I gave my mobile number to the office. So then when I was like Mitching or whatever it was, they'd ring me and I'd be like, yes, this is Leon's father.
Brilliant.
And I'm like, oh, he's gonna get a stern talk, whatever the fuck adults do. He's gonna get a stern talking to. Oh, thank you,
when
good
he gets
sir.
Back home.
Yeah, and my mum only found out like 2 weeks ago.
Amazing.
She's like, you bastard. I was like, I know.
Screening calls.
Yeah, but it's a very stressful time, but I remember one thing, like the only subject I liked history, but the one subject I really liked in school was English. That's why I went and did an English degree, because in school I used to argue with teachers and stuff like that, and the only teacher that really kind of believed in me was my English teacher. And he's great, but he's actually, I think he's an opera singer now. Very, very interesting man.
Amazing.
But I remember him reading this poem out by Eavan Boland, she's a fantastic Irish poet and has been on the Leaving Cert. And when people think of Leaving Cert, most people, Irish people, when they think of poetry, they think of Leaving Cert or Junior Cert poetry, and they're like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Head wrecking me
again. This fucking shite that's abstract, and you need your English teacher to basically, it's like, you know, in like a different language, and the English teacher is the only one that can speak that language, and they break it down for you, you know, a bit. But I remember this one poem that I heard, and he read it out loud, and I was like, oh, this is actually really good. And you could visualize the images and stuff like that, and I really liked this. So this poem is by a wonderful Irish writer. She was Eavan Boland. She taught in Stanford University, and then she was the writer in residence for the National Maternity Hospital in Dublin in 1994, which is, we were just saying, is very interesting
gig.
Yeah, so she actually composed Night Feed and The Tree of Life while she was there, and her work remains on a plaque in the hospital garden, which is pretty cool.
Beautiful.
Pretty cool. So the one I want to do is actually from, I don't know if it's still on the Leaving Cert or if it's still covered, but it was on my own, and I really liked it. And it came up, and I was delighted, because I actually was...
You understood it.
I only studied like fucking 2 poems when you're supposed to study like 12, and I was lucky enough that it showed up. So
that's not your fault. It's not the kid's fault even now.
No, but this is the black lace fan my mother gave me. It was the first gift he ever gave her, buying it for 5 francs in the galleries. In pre-war Paris, it was stifling. A starless drought made the nights stormy. They stayed in the city for the summer. They met in cafes. She was always early. He was late. That evening, he was later. They wrapped the fan. He looked at his watch. She looked down the Boulevard des Capucines. She ordered more coffee. She stood up. The streets were emptying. The heat was stifling. She thought the distance smelled of rain and lightning. These are wild roses, appliqued on silk by hand, darkly picked, stitched boldly, quickly. The rest is tortoiseshell, and has the reticent, clear patience of its element. It is a worn-out, underwater bullion, and it keeps even now an inference of its violation. The lace is overcast, as if the weather it opened for an offset had entered it. The past is an empty cafe terrace, an airless dusk before thunder, a man running, and no way now to know what happened then. None at all, unless, of course, you improvise. The blackbird on this first sultry morning in summer, finding buds, worms, fruit, feels the heat. Suddenly she puts out her wing, the whole, full, flirtatious span of it.
That was The Black Lace Fan My Mother Gave Me by Eavan Boland. We were just saying between recordings there that it's odd that something that has a romantic kind of twist is on the Leaving Cert. Lovely. A surprise to me when you're reading that. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
It's romantic. And it's
like romance being on the Leaving Cert, maybe. Not in the classic way. Like, obviously, you got romantic poets that are on the Leaving Cert, the ones from like 100, 200 years ago, but something that modern and a bit kinky. Can I say kinky? You know what I mean? Like, interesting. I've said it now anyway.
No, it is, and I remember having the conversation like with the English teacher. Shout out to Mr. Noon, and he was unreal. But just talking about it, he was like, I remember them describing it's like it's a looking back at the old kind of how the relationship of her mother and father have changed and gotten older, and how the fan has aged as well with the love affair, and how it's like kind of it's a flirtatious, dark, laced kind of. There is something flirty and romantic about it and young, but like I suppose you're young people reading about young love, probably around the time her mother was probably just slightly bit older than the people that would read that poem now. Yeah. If it was on the Leaving Cert, she would have been in her early 20s when what she was writing about. So like it kind of, but it's not vulgar land,
raunchy. It's just got a bit of
it's like
a smidge.
It's like 18th century porn.
Yeah,
he bared her ankles.
we should talk about Lord Byron at some point, shouldn't we? Talking about 18th century porn.
Oh yeah, Byron.
And he fucked everything.
He was described as mad, bad, and dangerous to be around.
Dangerous to know. I think it's dangerous to know.
Mad, bad, and dangerous to know.
We have to talk about him at some point. Amazing, man. Amazing. Can I ask you? We were talking about you were like, at school you were a bit of a challenging kid. I think I was as well. Most of my reporters, I'd be one of them people like, on the reporters can't sit still, always talking back. I was always chatting back to teachers. Looking back, I think that the chatting back was more me challenging what they were saying as truth, rather than, throwing. I was never like disruptive in school to other people.
Yeah.
Like I was probably being funny and making jokes, but really the disruption was, are you sure, sir? Are you sure that's true, sir? Can you tell us a bit, what do you mean? Nah, I don't think that's right, sir.
I was actually the same. And that's why, like, I would question, or I like to have discussions, as I call them. They're not arguments, they're discussions. Like, to yourself. You're going over something, you're discussing, you're, valid points and debating almost, and I'd always kind of push the debate and, put up, and the teacher would always think that I was being cheeky. But I'm not. I'm actually just genuinely looking for a conversation between obviously nobody likes people talking down to them, but like anyone from even an authority figure, I wouldn't like, just because you have a credential doesn't mean that you get to talk down to somebody. So as a young adult, I'd be like, raise myself, put us on an equal plane. Not from, I wouldn't raise myself up, I'd bring them, I'd be like, we're all equal. We're sharing ideas. This is a place of learning. It's supposed to be, whatever. And they would always find that cheeky. And it's funny because the English teacher I was talking about, I remember when I first started doing Leaving Cert English and thought I was being cheeky, and then I did an English test and I think was the highest in the class or the second highest, and he was like, he's actually just,
he's paying attention, he's just doing it in a different way.
He's just generally, but he actually is just asking questions. He's not just being a cheeky fuck trying to disrupt the class, So
I have flashbacks about my English teacher as well. Mrs. Smith, her name was. And all I really remember is whenever we were doing poetry, or whenever like she knew that something had to land at the class well. She'd always go, Ryan, are you listening? Yeah, don't worry, miss, I'm listening. Okay, let's see how we get on. And then she'd share the poem. I just have flashbacks of like no one else in the class existed, just me and her sparring. Like in the middle of a 30, 15-year-olds just listening to me and Mrs. Smith just going back and forth. And like looking back, I think that was like me wanting to show that like I am paying attention and I am on your level and you can get something from me pushing you. I think creative people do that. I think most people that create stuff were back chatters at school.
But you need to challenge ideas. You need to, like, that's how you strengthen ideas and you know, concepts and stuff like that. They need to be challenged. You can't just go, this is the way things are. Don't fucking question me. Like, you have to be able to, you know, and why is that? And, you know, examine it and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe if we were both focusing a bit more on just listening, we'd have done better at school.
Maybe.
Well, fuck them.
Fuck them anyway. Yeah. I got there in my own way. I went back to college when I was 27. Like, you know, I got there in my own way. It took me a bit, but it's all right.
Good lad.
In the end, you know?
Good lad. I was lucky enough to receive a lovely poem that was a winning poem of one of the last slams that I took part in, actually. So a couple of weeks ago, I was down at Talkatives at the Burnshaw, and the round before that was won by Ava Mary Lucy. Brilliant poetry. She won the heat. And as I was preparing for me going on a couple of weeks later, I was like, oh yeah, I actually bumped into her at Emma O'Brien's gig. And we had a little chat, and I was like, oh yeah, we've got this poetry. Oh, listen to it. I was like, oh, it'd be great to have a poem on. I'd like for you to send us something in. So she gave us the winning poem.
Oh wow.
Of that slam. And I really like it. It's got flashbacks it'll take you back to your childhood. It's got imagery, and we've all got that experience of thinking that, like, in the biscuit tin that your nan has, that there's something good in there, and then nope, it's needles, and it's always cotton, it's always knitting supplies, it's never
just disappointment.
Yeah. And this poem it's about disappointment, and also being disappointed there aren't any biscuits in your nan's tin. This poem by Ava Mary Lucy is called The Biscuit Tin. 28th of October 2006. I enter my nana's conservatory. A biscuit tin with a carousel printed on the lid is sitting on the dining table, and it is whispering to me. You feel the type I'm on about. Now we all know the chances of the tin containing sewing supplies, but still there they sit, Schrödinger biscuits. After making sure the coast is clear of tattletale brothers, I stealthily approach the tin and slip my hand inside before I can even look, all only to pull it back out and find my finger bleeding from a safety pin prick. The ribbons and the thimbles came to no one's surprise, not even my own. And even more, I loved watching my nana use her Singer machine to turn the old curtains into handkerchiefs. I shouldn't be disappointed. Still, we all dare to dream of biscuits when we're 9. Over time, I learned to dream of many more things. Young girl grown to woman, with her mind set on a career, success, a semi-functional social life, and on a wild night, love. So as any modern-day 21st century woman, my adult years consisted of meet cute with man after woman after man, until I stood still and met you. Cute. You wound me up on the spool, offered the world in a cloud of perfume, threw in maybe an orgasm or two, followed by a steep decline in interest regarding my pleasure, my needs, my passions and my dreams. There we go. It's the biscuit tin filled with needles and pins all over again. Sometimes a pretty picture on the front is all there is to find, and our expectations shift the more tins we open in life. Yet, your lack of biscuits took me by surprise. I had higher hopes, more expectations. I really did believe that you were something sweet.
That was The Biscuit Tin by Eva Marie Lucy. It's lovely.
Yeah, it is. The Venus flytrap of the biscuit tin.
Yeah, every young child has gone through that, going to their granny's house, been bitterly disappointed by the biscuit tin, of it just being like measuring tapes and fucking thimbles and all, needles.
And then maybe, how long does it take to shake that off as an attitude of love and applying that, like, shiny things? Like, you know, when you're younger, you're just attracted to the thing that catches your eye.
You're like a magpie.
Yeah, without really caring about the substance or whether or not you can gain anything from it. You're just starey.
It's kind of like when you're in your teenage years trying to get romantic love, I suppose, as well.
Yeah,
you don't care about
what I'm saying. Yeah. How many finger pricks does it take?
Few thimbles.
I think it takes a lot.
That's why I'm knitting. Yeah. Knitting safer than stitching.
And on my last finger remains unpricked.
I haven't called a prick before.
Yeah, same. It's all part of learning.
Yeah,
growing up.
It's interesting. I have to say, it's a very interesting poem because it's using maternal, like grand maternal love, and the symbol of maternal love being like, you know, like your nan's biscuit tin, and then also playing with the concept of romantic love and how it's different, using it as a symbol, you know, comparing. It's a very good comparison between the two, and juxtaposition as well of different kinds of love, and, you know, sets you up kind of.
Yeah, I think you were transported into two very different rooms, and it's quite like a sensitive feeling. That poem takes you to, like, your room when you're a child and the room when you have your first romantic experiences, and those rooms never come together. You know, it's like those doors are never open between the two. Yeah, it's quite an interesting experience to be in that poem and go, wait, yeah, okay, I hear you.
Things from your childhood always stick into adulthood, and it surprises you. Say, even so, I was lucky enough to teach in Finglas, and it was a women's group, so it was like a group of mums, and go in and do a bit of poetry and stuff like that. But when they first heard I was coming in, they were like, well, first of all, we thought you were going to be wearing a blazer or a turtleneck, and then they were like,
elbow patches.
Yeah, and then they were like, we were worried that like they instantly got the ick from there, thought that there was a person coming in teaching poetry, because they were thinking of their own school life and how poetry back then was like considered, you know, you'd have to be, it was formal, highbrow poetry, and it was stuff like that. So like, then I was like, no, it can be anything. Like, we wrote a poem about the menopause. We wrote stuff about, like, stuff, you know, normal things that would go on in their lives and all that stuff. And they were like, oh, hang on a second, you know, this is good. But we were talking a lot about school and how, and like, it's such a visceral reaction of when you think about school and things about like that, exams and stuff like that, how we can still have such an immediate and powerful response even now, years later.
Absolutely. 100%. Like, it's almost as if your life is now and what you remember from your immediate recent past and childhood. Never a story could be remembered between the two.
It never goes away.
Yeah.
And it can influence your adult life so much, and in ways you'd never even realise how much it's still influencing your life.
Yeah.
You know?
There's a lot of pressure on teaching, man. You are doing it. You are a guiding light of some of the younger people who are, you know,
just some bearded man comes in.
But you remember your teachers? I remember him.
Teaches a bit of shouting. Yeah. Well, the best thing was, like, I love doing what I'm doing because nobody ever did it for me.
Well, that's it, isn't it?
I had a great English teacher, but I never met a poet before. First poet I met, I think I was 25. First ever living poet. Never knew. Thought they were all like 100 years dead or something.
Yeah.
You know?
See him in the museum.
Well, that's when I go into schools, Mum was saying to them, like, well, the difference between me and a lot of poets that you'd see from education is I'm alive.
that is
we're
different.
We're like unicorns. You know, you might not see them, but we're there, lurking in the background, drinking pints.
Yeah,
and writing
drinking
poems.
pints in the corners of the pubs in the city that you live, where 5 people are listening to what they have to say.
Reading Pat Ingoldsby books.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, speaking of childhood, I thought we're talking about the Leaving Cert, we're talking about exams. I would love you to wrap up today's show with a message to the young people of Ireland who are going through the stress of the next 2 weeks of the damning end of nigh things that apparently define the rest of your being. You've got a message, I think, a message of support. And
thing is, like, my own sister is doing the Leaving Cert now, and she's going through all the emotions that comes with the Leaving Cert. I texted her this morning and it was I wish you all the luck in the world. Try your best.
Good man.
But at the end of the day, it's a load of shy.
Oh God.
And it is.
It is. But now she's gonna start swearing in her answers.
But she swears anyway. It's grand.
Yeah,
she
fine.
curses like I do. It's alright. I was talking to her yesterday. I was like, Jesus, she curses just as much as I do. So anyway, but this is a poem for her, and anyone else is doing the Leaving Cert as well. It's aptly called Leaving Cert, and I wrote about my own experiences of the Leaving Cert and everyone's experience, and just doing exams and being in school and stuff. And it's not it's not just the pressure that's put on you externally; it's the pressure you have internally, and what you put on yourself is usually a lot worse than the pressure that other people put around you. You know, and it's okay. You'll be grand, and at the end of the day, it is a lot of shy, and you'll get to college if you really, really want to. Like I did when I was 27. So, a little poem for those in waiting, on a few results that could determine their path through the river of life they're busy wading through. As a nation, I find it a bit silly to be placing all this pressure on 16 to 18-year-olds all for a single examination, all our little silly certification, but sure, aren't we all told the same thing? This is the biggest test of your life, so don't mess it up. And things are a bit different from my generation. For one thing, we were still gigged financially as a nation. I remember my guidance counsellor sitting us down. No empathy or sympathy, just wearing a small frown and a single simple statement. Things are a bit doused in turmoil right now. And I don't know how to tell you, but this is probably the only chance to make it through all this economic strife. And that's a bit heavy to hear for someone so young in life. I'd practically just fallen out of the womb at that stage. And after months of hearing it from all sides, don't be worrying, but you better be studying. It's only the biggest moment of your life, so don't waste it. Face it head on, be mature. Doesn't matter if you're unsure. All boils down to this, and if you miss it, you spend the rest of your life as a fuck up without a clue. Only highlight your week talking to L ones in the dole queue. Pressure's rising, I'm not sinking, I'm diving to the depths of despair. I haven't studied enough, I messed it up, and now something I never get the chance to repair. 13 years on, I can remember crying to my ma if I hear Legan is Shakur and Muckaquidge. One more time, I'm going to fucking scream. Listen, I got 240 points in the Leaving Cert. I remember the disappointment, feeling like a failure, like I messed everything up. And that dog queue was waiting, calling out my name. I didn't answer its call. Instead, I worked my whole off to build something small, my confidence in myself. I spent a few years travelling and seeing life beyond the shelf they tried to place us on. And I went to college when I was 27. And not once did they ask what points I got. Felt like I died gone to heaven, no labels, no bullshit or fables. My point in all this is that you are worth more than some silly little score that's 600. And I'm just using my life as an example, a sample that you might not take the direct route. A few twists and turns here and there, but it's the truth. And I hope you get all the points that you want. But if you don't, it's not the be all and end all. Because you are worth more than some silly little score. Because you are worth more than some silly little score.
That was our very own Leon Dunn with Leaving Cert. If I was doing the Leaving Cert and I heard that, I'm skipping into class.
Cartwheeling out the door afterwards for a few cans.
A few cans down the park. Absolutely.
You're an adult, might as well enjoy yourself.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, man.
Thank you very much.
I loved it. I always have loved that poem. couple of things to cover before we wrap it up. So we've got the poetry competition with the poetry edit that's running now. That's live. The guys over there have been telling us they've been getting some lovely contributions already, some amazing submissions. So head over to the Poetry Edits Instagram. We'll reshare it again on our Instagram. Basically, it's a competition that we're running for a slot on the show, a featured slot on the show. Might even have you on. Who knows? You work out the tech of getting guests on. By then, we'll have you on. So yeah, go over to the Poetry Edit and submit your lovely poems. No prompts, no specifics. Just write whatever's on your mind.
Get involved.
Or else.
You won't be involved.
And that's fine, because you've got a life.
But if you want to, be mad cultured and all, and perhaps eventually get onto the Leaving Cert maybe yourself.
You've got to start somewhere.
Start with us.
I think the biggest Leaving Cert success story, not the Leaving Cert, but in England, our version of it, let's say, the GCSEs and A-levels, the Manchester poet that we've spoken to about before, John Cooper Clarke, was on the syllabus. And in Sheffield, in the early 2000s, there was a guy called Alex Turner, who was at school, who read that poem, and he was doing a little band called the Arctic Monkeys at the time, doing a few gigs. Because at school, remember, like, you were at school, and a few lads, like, at music, like, they'd have, like, a gig or two now and again.
Yeah.
And they read I Want to Be Yours.
That's unreal.
That was part of the syllabus, and then now it became a huge part of their playlist and one of the most popular songs they've ever written.
It's incredible.
Yeah, mad. So get yourself on the Leaving Cert. And it starts here with that submission. So submit your fucking poem. Write it and send it them. Also,
give fucking poems now.
Send it us now. Also, talking about Pat Ingoldsby earlier on, we've got the offer, the collaboration with the Winding Stair Bookshop. So anyone who subscribes to our Patreon gets 15% all books. The reason I'm bringing it up is the only place you can buy a Pat Ingoldsby book, unless you knock on his door in Malahide or go to Westmoreland Street if he's there, which he never is go to the Winding Stair Bookshop, where they have them all available to you.
Or unless maybe perhaps you're a hobbit that has to throw a ring into the fires of Mount Doom, maybe then, only then, Pat Ingoldsby will appear. But other than that, go to Winding Stair. Use our discount code.
Yeah, do it. Absolutely do it. Leon, thanks for your time.
Always a pleasure, never the chore, Ryan, baby.
I enjoyed that. We'll be back next week.
Ciao.
See you later.
Cue the EastEnders music.